What's up YouTube, this is Peter and I'm going to be talking about Diablo 4 again. Specifically, I want to do an overview of my Season 1 build, which came out particularly nicely. I call this build the Blood Amazon. This is a Necromancer build, a Necromancer specifically oriented around Bloodlands. And I'm going to be going over my objectives for this build first. Then we're gonna talk about the backstory, the skills and aspects for the build, Book of the Dead, gear, Paragon nodes, stats, and possible modifications to the build. So let's just jump straight in. So this is the Blood Amazon. The objectives for this build is for her to play like a Lightning Fury Amazon from Diablo 2. If you haven't played Diablo 2 or maybe haven't played Lightning Fury Amazon, then I will post a link to a video of how the Blood Fury Amazon plays. Mostly it's just spamming lightning javelins. She throws a javelin and then this javelin kind of spreads out into multiple javelins as she hits the first enemy, so that the entire screen is covered with lightning infused javelins. So that's the first objective, to kind of replicate this behavior here. The second objective, as I mentioned, is just to spam blood lances as much as possible, so the entire screen should be covered in blood lances. And then the third objective is this build is also built around the Overpower mechanic. So what we want to do here is we want to take advantage of the Overpower mechanic as much as possible. And there's also kind of a fourth objective, which is to do a build that kind of goes against the grain. So we are going to be using Overpower, which is a mechanic that is awesome but maybe a little bit overlooked in Diablo 4. And then we're also not going to be using any of the seasonal malignant hearts that are considered best for Necromancer. So we're not going to be using Barber, we're not going to be using the Decrepify Aura, and we're also not going to be using the heart that automatically explodes corpses or triggers corpse skills. Right, so talking about her backstory a little bit. So the Blood Amazon is an Amazon, so she was raised on the island of Skovos together with the Askari, which are her people, and she was one of the best. She excelled in her training, particularly she excelled with the Javelin and with the Lightning Fury skill. So Amazons and the Warriors of Skovos are highly sought after as mercenaries, so that's exactly what happened. She was hired as a mercenary to Skullsglen to dispatch a group of bandits. And it actually turned out that the person who hired her to dispatch those mercenaries turned out to be a triune necromancer, and he actually also hired the bandits to kill her. So that whoever died he could use for corpses, and whoever lived he could capture and use for his more advanced experiments. So the Amazon managed to kill all of the bandits, but she was captured by the Necromancer, and she was imprisoned in his lair. And as an additional safety precaution, to make sure that she would never hurt him, she would never throw another javelin again, the Necromancer has crushed all the bones in the palms of her hands. So she did manage to escape. She did manage to kill the Necromancer, her capturer, but she couldn't. She had nowhere to go. She couldn't come back to her people. She couldn't hire herself as a mercenary again because she couldn't throw a javelin because of her crushed hands. So, well, with nothing else to do, she actually stayed in the Necromancer's lair after killing him, and she started studying necromancy from the tomes in his library. So eventually she became adept in blood magic and bone magic, and she's found a new way to unleash her lightning fury through Bloodlands and Bone Storm. And also she now travels the world of Sanctuary, hunting for the evils for Triune disciple, for the evil that has crippled her and shamed her in the very beginning. However, well, that's what she would tell you. However, people say that there is actually a darker story to her, that maybe the necromancer that she killed has not died, but in fact has managed to consume her soul and take over her body. And it's actually the necromancer that is now traversing the world inside of the Amazon's body, seeking, well, whatever sinister ends he would be after. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory. Moving over to the skills and aspects, because it's kind of pointless to talk about one without the other. So going over the skill tree first. So our main skill is going to be Bloodlance, of course. That is the main way that we are going to be doing damage. So we not only want to have as many ranks of Bloodlance as possible, we also want to enhance Bloodlance as much as possible, and we are going to be doing that through aspects. So first, I of course invested 5 points into Bloodlance. Then I went for enhanced Bloodlance so that it pierces, which is always good. And the important thing here is supernatural Bloodlance. So what this does is every 6 Bloodlance that you fire is going to be guaranteed to overpower. So that's going to be a damage bonus based on your life every 6 Bloodlance that you fire. And what's important to note here with the overpower mechanic is that the bonus is not based on your weapon damage or your damage in general. It's based solely on the amount of life that you have, and fortified life, but that's kind of that comes from life. So the short thing to remember here is the more life you have, the more damage you do, and we are going to be taking advantage of that as much as possible. So the way we are going to enhance Bloodlance is first Supernatural Bloodlance for the Overpower bonus every 6 shot, and then we are also going to have aspects. First is the aspect of Hungry Blood, and what this does is each cast of Bloodlance will fire an additional Bloodlance at a nearby enemy. So you can see that this is already starting to work kind of like Lightning Fury, right? Every Bloodlance, once it hits an enemy, it's actually going to split up into 2 Bloodlances. One is going to just pierce the enemy and continue on, and the other one is going to target another nearby enemy. The second aspect that we're going to take is aspect of the Gore Quills, and this one's very important for this build because what this does is blood orbs will spawn Bloodlances. So every blood orb that is currently on the screen will spawn a Bloodlance, and maybe the wording on this aspect is a little bit not incorrect but unreadable. What this actually does is that casting Bloodlances will actually pick up blood orbs for you. So consume blood orbs, that's maybe not so obvious, but what happens is all of the blood orbs will get picked up. So all of the additional affixes or aspects that you have that rely on picking up blood orbs, these all are going to trigger automatically. So for example, if you have like in this ring 25.5 damage 4 seconds after picking up that blood orb, so all of the blood orbs will be picked up and will trigger this affix once you cast Bloodlance. And then the more blood orbs you have on screen, the more Bloodlances are going to be cast. So we kind of, what we want for this build is we want to be spawning as much blood orbs as possible. And to do that, we are going to use the aspect of the Embalmer, which I put in my amulet so that it has 50% more power. And what this does is consuming a corpse has a 45% to spawn a blood orb. So what this means is that basically every second corpse that you consume is going to spawn a blood orb. So to get a lot of Bloodlances, to for this build to play like Lightning Fury Amazon, we want to have a lot of blood orbs on screen, and to have a lot of blood orbs on screen, we want to have a lot of corpses. And we not only want to be generating a lot of corpses, we want to be consuming a lot of corpses as well. So how do we generate and consume a lot of corpses? Well, we are going to be doing that using Bone Storm. So Bone Storm, you probably know how it works. A swirling storm of bones appears around you, doing quite a bit of damage. And then the important thing here is another aspect, the aspect of the Osseous Gale. What this aspect does is Bone Storm consumes up to 8 corpses to increase its duration by 9 seconds, up to 10 seconds. Well, but the best one I managed to find so far is 9. And the other important thing for Bone Storm is going to be our unique shield, the Lidless Wall. Because what this does is, while you have an active Bone Storm, hitting an unaffected enemy has a 20% to spawn an additional Bone Storm at their location. Each of your active sacrifice bonuses increases the chance by 25%, and the number of additional Bone Storms is +1. So if we have no minions, that means that right now when we get a lucky hit, we have a 95% chance to spawn a Bone Storm. So basically every lucky hit out of Bone Storm's range, so with Bloodlance, is going to spawn an additional Bone Storm in that location, unless we already reach the maximal number, which is going to be 5. And all of those additional Bone Storms, again, work exactly like the original Bone Storm would work. So all of them are going to consume up to 8 corpses, and all of them are going to increase their duration by 9 seconds. So if you run fast, if you move fast through the dungeon, if you keep killing enemies, you can basically spawn Bone Storms basically infinitely, depending on the conditions, in theory, right? So that will allow you, each Bone Storm is going to consume 8 corpses, so that will allow you to consume corpses en masse of your enemies, and then each of these corpses has a 50% chance to spawn a blood orb, and then each one of these blood orbs will basically turn into a bloodlance. So this is how we are going to be covering the entire screen in Bloodlances. So one other thing to take note of is I've actually gone for both modifications of Bone Storm. I'm going to be going over the other one in a second, but the one I want to talk about here is Supreme Bone Storm. That gives you 20% crit chance. It's really hard to go wrong with this. I'm not really heavily invested in critical strikes, but the 20% bonus is just so massive that I decided to go for it, because that's always more damage. So, of course, if we're using Bloodlance, then Bloodlance consumes essence, right? It consumes essence, so we are going to be needing a lot of resources in general. We are going to be needing a lot of essence, we are going to be needing a lot of corpses, and we're going to be needing a lot of blood orbs. And also the thing with Bone Storm is that it has a very big cooldown. The cooldown is 60 seconds. So what we're going to be wanting to do is we're going to be wanting to decrease that cooldown as much as possible, because the Lidless Wall thing is kind of not super reliable. You can get into a tight spot every once in a while where there's just not going to be enough enemies to spawn your additional Bone Storms and maintain that kind of Bone Storm chain. So then once that's over, you want to have another cast of Bone Storm on hand. You want the cooldown to be 0 so that you can just continue running through the dungeon unhindered. So I'm going to be talking about the other skills by kind of the category of what they do for my build, and the first thing I'm going to be talking about is resource generation. So as I just mentioned, we want to be generating as much resource as possible to kind of be able to afford just spamming these Bloodlances one after the other. And the way we are going to do that is first of all Grim Harvest. So consuming a corpse generates 6 essence. So the more corpses we generate, the more essence we are and consume, the more essence we are going to get. So if we have the 5 bone storms that are just consuming corpses over and over, that's going to continually generate essence for us and keep our essence bar full. The other thing that we need is Hued Flesh. This one is almost auto-include for basically every necro build. Your damage has a lucky hit. Your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target location. So all of our skills that we use, any type of damage that we do, once we lucky hit, we have a 12% chance to spawn a corpse, and this chance is actually doubled against bosses. So if we are fighting a boss where generating corpses is particularly tricky, then we have every 4th corpse that we generate from the boss, every 4th lucky hit that we get on the boss is going to spawn a corpse. So that's always good. Also, if we happen to run out of mana, which we will eventually, even despite Grim Harvest and Hued Flesh, then the second way which we are going to generate essence is Iron Maiden. Particularly, we are going to take Enhanced Iron Maiden, which causes Iron Maiden to no longer cost essence, but instead it generates essence for each enemy. So if you run out of essence in the middle of a fight and there's like a big cluster of enemies coming at you, then you can just use Iron Maiden on them, and not only are they going to take damage every time they deal damage, they will also fill up your essence bar to the maximum so that you can continue to spam Bloodlands. And actually the 4th way that we are going to generate essence is, well, our basic skill. For the basic skill, we are going to take Hemorrhage, and then we are also going to take Acolyte's Hemorrhage, which increases the attack speed by 20% once we are healthy. This is just so that we can generate essence faster. And the reason that you can notice that I've only put 1 point here in Hemorrhage. The reason for this is that the point of Hemorrhage is not to do damage. We are not using it to do damage. That's what Bloodlance is for. Hemorrhage is only used for 2 things. One is generate essence, and the other one is spawn blood orbs. This is particularly important when we're fighting a boss, because as I said, corpses are kind of hard to come by when you're fighting a boss with this build. So what you do is when you run out of essence, you hit him with Hemorrhage a couple of times, and that spawns, that fills up your essence bar and spawns the blood orbs that you can turn into blood lances and do more damage with the next blood lance that you spawn once your essence bar is full. So yeah, that's kind of the 3rd way that we're going to generate essence. And the last thing that we are going to use for essence generation is, I have 1 point in Unliving Energy here. Maximum essence is increased by 3, that's always good. More essence means more blood lances before we run out and have to compensate somehow. So the next thing that we want to talk about is cooldown reduction. We want cooldown reductions, particularly for Bone Storm, as I said earlier. So we are going to be reducing our cooldowns in 2 ways, with skills, and 1 way with an aspect. The first way is rapid ossification. I've taken 3 ranks of this. Every 100 essence you spend reduces the cooldowns of your bone skills by 1.5 seconds. And we are going to be using a lot of essence because we want to be spamming Bloodlance. So every 100 essence, the cooldown of Bone Storm is reduced by 1.5 seconds. Pretty excellent. And then the other way that we are going to be reducing the cooldown of Bone Storm, and actually all of our skills, is Decrepify. Specifically, I've gone here up to Abhorrent Decrepify, and what this does is enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify have up to a 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. So since we are going to be spamming Bloodlands, and we are going to also have our attack speed as high as possible, then we are going to be doing a lot of hits. Also, we are going to be doing a lot of hits with Bone Storm. And this really adds up, because a lot of hits means, when you do more hits, it means more lucky hits, it means more critical hits. It's really hard to go wrong with attack speed in this game. So this really adds up, and you will see that using Abhorrent Decrepify really massively reduces the cooldown of your all of your skills, basically, but specifically your ultimate skill, which basically have the highest cooldown, one of the highest cooldowns in the game. So the third way that we are going to be reducing our cooldowns is actually with an aspect. Aspect of the Wind Striker. Let's see here. Oh no, that's for movement speed. So yeah, sorry. So that's the two ways that we are going to be reducing our cooldowns. Where Wind Striker just allows us to run faster. Yeah, and this is actually kind of important. That's why I put it there. Because what Wind Striker does is it increases our movement speed. And we want to be moving fast to be able to just encounter the next group of enemies faster. So that we can hit them with Bloodlance again and spawn another Bone Storm at their location, so that we can continue to chain the Bone Storm for as long as possible. So Bone Storm is going to cause a lot of hits, Bloodlance is going to cause a lot of hits, these are going to cause a lot of critical hits in turn, and every critical hit is going to make us run faster. So it's also kind of indirectly helping with our resource management and cooldown reduction, because what it does is allows us to cast Bone Storm less often, because we can chain one cast of Bone Storm for longer with Lidless Wall. So the next thing I want to talk about is how we are going to be enhancing Overpower. The fact that our Bloodlance, every 6 cast of it overpowers, and we are going to be doing this in 2 ways in the skill tree. So one way is of course Wrathman's Figure, that is going to be our key passive, and what this does is, first of all, it increases your maximum life by 10%, and this is a massive damage boost. So just for this I would take Wrathman's Figure when I'm doing an Overpower build, because as I said, when you're doing an Overpower build, more life means flat out more damage. But in addition to that, after being healthy for 12 seconds, your next blood skill will overpower. So not only will every 6th Bloodlance overpower, if we remain healthy long enough, then also every 12 seconds a Bloodlance will overpower, regardless which one in turn it is. And the other way that we are going to be enhancing Overpower is Tides of Blood. Your blood skills deal 15% increased overpower damage. This bonus is doubled while you are healthy. So as you can kind of see kind of a theme here. We want to remain healthy as much as possible, because then we are just going to do more damage, because the bonus of the damage bonus of Overpower is also reliant on your current life and current fortified life. So the more life you currently have, the more damage you are going to do. Yeah, so that's it for Overpower. Next, Survivability, how we are going to enhance survivability with this build. And first of all, we have Aspect of the Shielding Storm. I have it here, yeah. So each time Bone Storm damages an enemy, a barrier equal to 5% of your base life for 10 seconds is gained. So this is going to be our main source of survivability. This is particularly good. This aspect is particularly good because it doesn't have an upper limit on the amount of barrier that you can have. For example, unlike for example Temerity, which can only grant you a barrier of up to 80% of your maximum health. Here you just gain 5% of barrier per hit. With no upper limit, and Bone Storm is going to be hitting enemies a lot just by itself, and with Lidless Wall we are going to be spamming up to 5 Bone Storms all over the place. So all of these bone storms are going to be generating the barrier for us. So that's going to help our survivability a lot. Next thing for survivability is Drain Vitality. That's a blood skill over here. So hitting enemies with blood skills has up to a 30% to fortify you for 8% base life. This is kind of important also. Because Fortify is in general a great mechanic for the Necromancer, because kind of like Overpower, it also has the ability to enhance your damage and enhance your survivability at the same time. You have affixes, which we are going to be looking at shortly, that make you do more damage while fortified, and you also have affixes that grant you damage reduction while fortified. So being fortified is a very good thing, very good state to be in. So we want to be fortified as much as possible, and actually fortifying ourselves for 8% of life every time we lucky hit with blood skills, that's already enough. That's already going to be this one source of fortify is enough with another affix that is going to be give you more fortify per lucky hit with blood skills. Then the next thing for survivability is going to be Prime Bone Storm. Again, it's really hard to go wrong with Bone Storm. I think this is the best ultimate skill for the Necromancer at this time, because not only is it going to do damage, not only is it going to give you 20% crit chance, but it's also going to give you damage reduction of 15%, which is a lot, and this always works when Bone Storm is active. So again, with Lidless Wall, we are going to be just chaining Bone Storms for as long as possible. So we are going to have the 50% damage reduction bonus basically all the time. The next way we are going to be enhancing our survivability is Aspect of Disobedience. Where is it here? Yeah. So you gain 0.50% increased armor for 4 seconds when you do any form of damage, stacking up to 30%. So 30% armor in my current build, that basically translates to around 22-23% damage reduction. So yeah, over 20% damage reduction, that's always nice, and that's actually going to help a lot with our survivability, because that is going to cause enemy attacks to drain less from our barrier, and then eventually, if we happen to run out of barrier, less from our life. That is always good. And the last way that we are going to be enhancing our survivability is Blood Mist. So again, it's hard to go wrong with this skill for Necro. This is kind of like your get out of jail free card. If you find yourself in a tight spot, you can always just trigger Blood Mist and you can basically run away into a safer position. Because what Blood Mist is going to do is it's going to make you immune for 3 seconds. So you take no damage whatsoever for 3 seconds. Very useful for tight situations of all sorts. And so the next thing I want to talk about is crowd control. Crowd control is very important for the Necromancer, particularly because of the control glyph in our Paragon board, which we are going to be talking about in a second. So the way we are going to be crowd controlling enemies, first of all, is Decrepify. I've already talked about Decrepify, but here I just want to point out that not only are enemies slowed by 40%, with Decrepify they also do 20% less damage. So that's kind of similar to you having 20% extra damage reduction, which is always good. And then actually enhanced Decrepify also helps up a lot, because it has a chance to stun enemies on lucky hit when you Decrepify them. So that's another source of crowd control, which is always nice. And I've put 1 point into Decrepify here just because the bonuses of the subsequent ranks are not that amazing. You can see next rank slow is only 43%, so 3% slower, and then damage reduction is 20.9%. So I think one rank is basically enough. I'd rather invest the affixes and skill points into other stuff, like for example amplify damage or barrier generation in terms of affixes. Right, and the last way that we are going to be crowd controlling is aspect of shared misery. What this does is when you hit a crowd control enemy, there is up to a 50% chance, if you have the max roll one, for that crowd control effect to spread to another unaffected enemy. And this, again, this really adds up. If you do a lot of hits like this build does, you're going to do a lot of lucky hits, and then you are going to be spreading your crowd control effects all over the place. So as you may see in the showcase video that I did for the build, basically all of the enemies, if I crowd control one or two enemies, then in a second all of the enemies on the screen are crowd controlled because of the way that shared misery works. And the last thing I'm going to be talking about is maybe the most obvious one: how do I boost my damage with skills and aspects? So first of all, there's going to be the Fueled by Death passive, which I took 3 ranks of, and that's going to deal 9% increased damage for 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. So I'm going to be consuming a lot of corpses with the Bone Storm and subsequent chained Bone Storms. So that's going to translate into doing 9% more damage all the time. Next, amplify damage. Since I'm going to be using a lot of corpses, Decrepify for my crowd control and my cooldown reduction, and Iron Maiden for my essence generation, then I might as well boost my damage when I curse a lot of enemies on the screen. Then I'm also taking Imperfectly Balanced, 2 ranks of that. Your core skills cost 6% more essence, but deal 10% increased damage. That's always good. Next one is going to be Coalesced Blood. Here, while healthy, your blood skills deal 80% increased damage. So again, we really want to remain healthy when using this build, and that's what the barrier is for. So all of the damage that is going to be going into us, we are going to absorb with the barrier and remain healthy, so that we can do as much damage and as much overpower damage as possible. Next one, since I'm not going to have any minions to have the highest possible chance of spawning a subsequent Bloodstorm with Lidless Wall, then might as well take 3 ranks of Standalone, which increases my damage reduction by 80%. This one should actually be in the survivability, but whatever. And then I'm also going to take Memento Mori, sacrificing both Skeletal Warriors and Skeletal Mages, increases their sacrifice bonuses by 60%. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the Book of the Dead, which we are going to go over next. So in terms of Book of the Dead, we are going to be sacrificing all of our minions. And the main reason for this is that we can have the highest possible chance of spawning a Bloodstorm with Lidless Wall. So each active sacrifice bonus increases the chance by 25%. So if we sacrifice all 3 of our minion types, that's 25 times 3, 75%, and then an additional 20% from the roll, so that's like a 95% chance to spawn an additional Bone Storm on a lucky hit. So basically always, every lucky hit is going to spawn an additional Bone Storm. So the sacrifice bonuses that I've chosen is Skirmishers for the additional critical strike chance, because that's always more damage, which is always good. You may want to consider going for non-physical resistance to boost your survivability somewhat, but I've chosen the damage one. Mages, this one's kind of obvious. You go for sacrificing the Bone Mages, and that's going to give you 40% more overpower damage. And since this build is basically built around overpower damage, that's what we want to do. And the golem is also obvious. Sacrificing the blood golem is going to give you 10% maximum life. So again, this will be a massive boost to your overpower damage bonus. I'm actually going to be making a separate video on how exactly the overpower mechanic works, because it's really awesome and it's really overlooked by players across the board. So that's it for Book of the Dead. Next we're going to be going over the gear. So let's just start with the weapon. Here I have a wand that does pretty much good damage. The affixes could have been better. So 51.8% overpower damage. This one is obvious because this one is to enhance the overpower damage bonus, which we are going to be doing every 6 cast of our main skill. Then critical strike damage, well, that's a nice bonus, but maybe it could have been something like damage with blood skills or whatever, but I didn't manage to find a better wand, unfortunately. Let me just relog in here. Right. Then damage to distant enemies. This one is nice. However, I have a lot of damage reduction bonuses from close enemies, so I would actually prefer this to be damage to close enemies. But whatever, I'll just take that as it is. And then 25.2% core skill damage. Bloodlance is a core skill, so that's how we are going to be doing more damage with our main skill, with the weapon affix. Lidless Wall, this one's pretty straightforward because you can only roll the because Lidless Wall is a unique item. You can only roll the amount of affixes on the unique item, but the affixes themselves are always exactly the same. So again, damage to distant enemies, 33%. Yeah, that's kind of nice. I basically want to keep at a distance, especially in the end game on very high level nightmare dungeons. But as it is, because there's a lot of enemies, they are very fast, etc. So they will get up to you eventually. So eventually you're going to have to be up close to the enemies. So that's why I will take damage reduction from close enemies on the other, on my other gear. But damage to distant enemies, well, it's not going to be any different because it's a unique item that I need. So that's just what it is. Then 40.4 attack speed. Attack speed is really good for this build because the more attack speed we have, the more blood lances we are going to spam. So the more overpower we are going to do, so the more often we are going to have the 6 hit that has the overpower bonus, and the more blood lances we are going to spam, which is kind of the objective for the Blood Amazon in the first place. Then lucky hit, up to a 5% chance to restore primary resource. This one's very important because that's another way how you're going to be generating essence on your lucky hits. And 18 maximum essence, that's always good for your resource management as well. Moving over to the jewelry. So Amulet of the Embalmer, this one's kind of meh, but it has movement speed. Which is good because then I can move faster, so I can encounter enemies more often, so I can chain bone storms with Lidless Wall for as long as possible. So movement speed, blood skill damage, damage reduction, and just overall damage buff. Well, it's not the best, but it's not bad either. I didn't manage to find a better one as of yet. And actually the Malignant Heart that I have here is kind of important because my Wrathful Heart that I'm using for this build is, I think it's called Heart of the Great Feast, and what it does is each minion drains 1.2 essence per second but deals 93 increased damage, and with no minions this bonus applies to you and drains 5 essence per second. So what this does is it constantly drains my essence 5 per second when I'm out of town or not mounted, but for that I'm doing 93% more damage. So this is kind of excellent. So you basically do double damage at the cost of constantly draining your essence. And actually, you can break even with the essence. I will show you. So let me just go out of town here quickly.
I cannot do that here.
Maybe I'll run faster without the horse. So let's move out of town so that our essence starts draining. And let's actually drain some essence here. Attack some enemies, whatever. So you can see that my essence is draining constantly. But then again, it's kind of staying at the same level. You'll see that
I need more essence.
you'll see that every time I spend every time the part of the Great Feast consumes 5 essence, I actually gain 5 essence from my essence regeneration. So that kind of allows me, the affixes that I have allow me to break even with the essence. And so the downside is that I'm not generating any essence over time. I have to rely on my ways to generate essence outside of just passive essence regeneration. But that's okay, I have plenty of them, as you heard in my skills overview. And well, then I basically do double damage, so that's very nice. And the way I'm doing this is I actually have maxed out resource generation in one ring. I have almost maxed out resource generation in my other ring. And I also have the Malignant Heart in my amulet, which gives me an additional 8.0% resource generation. That's the max roll. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to have 4.55 passive essence regeneration per second. And because this value is rounded, then actually 4.50 is the breakpoint to break even with Heart of the Great Feast. So as long as you break 4.50, your character is going to generate 5 essence per second already. So that's the thing that allows me to break even with essence and do double damage at the same time.
I need more time.
So that's it for the amulet. Then for the ring, for the rings, one ring is going to have the Malignant Heart of the Picana, and that's going to cause critical strikes to electrically charge enemies for some amount of time, and then the lightning is going to arc between them, doing damage to them. So I've selected this card because it plays well into the build of a Blood Amazon. So we want to be like a Lightning Fury Amazon, so it's kind of obvious that we want to do some lightning damage. And what the Picana allows us to do is it allows us to do just that, do constantly lightning damage to groups of enemies. And it also looks really cool, as a side note. So for the affixes of the ring itself, you have your resistances, of course, and then the most important one is maximum life. You want to have as much maximum life affixes as possible, because again, the more life you have, the more overpowered damage you're going to do. So that's very important for my damage. More life, more damage. Simple as that. Then 25.5 damage 4 seconds after picking up a blood orb. So we are going to be generating a lot of blood orbs with this build. We are also going to be picking up a lot of blood orbs with the aspect that I have right here in this ring. So basically the 25.5 and other damage boosts that I have in my other gear are always going to be active, even when fighting bosses, because when fighting a boss there's not going to be a lot of corpses, obviously, but then again we are going to be using hemorrhage to regenerate our essence, which just so happens to spawn blood orbs. So then once we trigger blood again at full essence, we are going to get the damage boost right away. 39% overpower damage, that one's again pretty obvious, so enhancing our overpower bonus further. And resource generation, that one is just to break even with the Heart of the Great Feast. Now the other ring. So the other ring, that's going to be Heart of the Great Feast, as I already mentioned. Then we are going to have maximum life again, 24% blood orb healing. Well, I would prefer this one to be something else, maybe blood skill damage or something, but this always helps. Then 39% overpower damage, again enhancing our overpower as much as possible, and resource generation to break even with the Malignant Heart of the Great Feast, which I have right here. Moving over to the armor, the helmet, again maximum life, maximum essence, that always helps for resource management. 12.8 barrier generation, this is just to enhance the survivability, so that the 5% of barrier that we generate from Bone Storm is no longer 5% but enhanced with this value added to it. And then 21% damage for 4 seconds after picking up a Blood Orb. That's further going to increase our damage bonus when we pick up a Blood Orb. Next, we have the armor. So again, maximum life, that's for overpower, that's for the overpower damage bonus and survivability. Damage reduction while fortified, this plays into the fortify mechanic. Blood skill damage, that's going to enhance the damage of Bloodlance in general. And again, 24% damage for 4 seconds after picking up a Blood Orb. This one further increases the damage that we're going to do while picking up and spawning Blood Orbs all the time. Next, the gloves. So here we have a massive 60% overpower damage. You really want this affix on gloves just because it's such a huge bonus. 30.8% attack speed, that's going to allow us to overpower more often and hit more often, which is going to be more lucky hits and more overpowered hits, so more damage in general. Then restore resource on lucky hit again, and the way this works is that these two lucky hits are actually counted separately. So when you lucky hit, it's first going to roll for the 5% chance in the shield, and then it's going to roll separately for the 5% chance to restore the primary resource in the gloves. So these two bonuses do not stack, they are kind of independent two additional rolls that you will have on each lucky hit. So having two is always means that you're always going to get the resource bonus more often, so you're going to regenerate more resource in general. And then 3 ranks of Bloodlance. Yes, I would prefer it to be 4, but I didn't manage to roll 4 just yet on the gloves, so that's what it is currently. Now, for the trousers. So while injured, your potion also restores 30% resource. That's always nice if you're in a sticky situation. 70% damage reduction from close enemies. So as I said, when you're doing really high level dungeons like level 80 plus, then enemies will eventually come up to you, and or you may encounter enemies that have the suppressor type enemies that have the force field, and then it's also very important to be able to handle yourself when you have to get up close to an enemy and do damage to it. So this is where the damage reduction from close enemies helps a lot, which is why I decided to take it, even though I'm doing more damage to distant enemies with both my main hand and offhand weapons. Again, maximum life. This one enhances overpower damage and also enhances your survivability at the same time. Blood Orb healing 22.5%. Again, maybe I would prefer it to be something else, but the Blood Orbs healing you constantly is helpful. It helps your survivability, and it also helps your damage. And then 7% dodge chance against close enemies. Well, this one also is kind of helpful. And last but not least, the boots. So attacks reduce evades cooldown by 9 seconds. This one is very helpful because you're going to be attacking a lot with my high attack speed. So you're going to have evade constantly active basically. 24% movement speed. This one is for moving fast because you want to move fast to be able to chain Bone Storm as much as possible. 50 dexterity. This one is for the Paragon board, which you'll see in a moment. 30% fortified generation. This one allows me to become fortified faster, and 10% essence cost reduction. This one is very good for my resource management. So yeah, that's it for the gear. Next we are going to be moving on to the Paragon board. So this is my Paragon board. I have 4 tiles attached to my primary tile, and here already you are going to see how I am taking advantage of the overpower mechanic to a maximum, because the one that you probably went for when you first started with your Paragon board is this: 20% more damage, and here you have 5% damage. So that's kind of a no-brainer. You want to do more damage first of all, of course. But then again, you also want to take these 2% maximum life, because with Overpower, every percent of life that you have means also that you do more damage. So you want these, and then you also want to go down here and take this node as well, because this one is not only 8% ORS but also 4% maximum life. So this is going to be also a massive damage boost to your Overpower attacks. And then here you have these 2, which are 2% maximum life. So here you have a total of 8% maximum life, which will help your survivability, and it will help your damage with your overpowering attacks. For the glyph, I've went for control, and actually this is one of the best glyphs for the necromancer, and the reason is that it depends on buying intelligence. There are actually only 2 glyphs that work like this. 2 rare glyphs that work like this. One is control, and the other one is mage, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So that's only relevant for skeleton builds, because that increases the damage of your skeletal mages. So you want this glyph because you're going to take 2 of these rare glyphs here, which are actually going to be granting you 10 intelligence each. And this allows you to have a massive 70 intelligence once you take all of these little nodes and the rare nodes, which basically translates to almost 150% more damage to crowd controlled enemies, which is basically, you can't get any more than that with Necromancer. That is the reason why crowd control is very important for a Necromancer. You want to have crowd control, you want to have something like the Crepify or slow unlucky hit or stun unlucky hit or something, just because you want to take advantage of this glyph, because this is the biggest damage boost that you can have on your Paragon board from a single glyph, if I'm not mistaken. So here I'm also taking the damage upgrades, of course. I'm taking the willpower upgrades because I'm going to need a lot of willpower, and I'm also taking the armor upgrade, but only because it gives me 10 additional intelligence, so that means more damage from this particular glyph. So the first tile that I've attached is the Blood Begets Blood tile. However, I'm not taking the legendary glyph, because at first glance it seems like a no-brainer. Well, take it, because that gives you more damage on every blood orb that you pick up. However, the maximal bonus is only 15%, which is not great. You can enhance your build far more while taking some other of these glyphs. And you can see that this is kind of a long way here. I would have to spend a lot of points to get this 50% damage bonus, so I can kind of optimize way more and get more damage by allocating these points elsewhere. So the glyph I went for here is Dominate, which is, well, when taking all of the willpower nodes here, is going to give me a huge 320% bonus to overpower damage. So again, that is going to enhance my overpower build greatly. You need to take all of these willpower nodes here, and these 2 are also important because they are 15% to overpower damage each. There's actually a third one here, so that's 45% to overpower damage in general. And then here you have 20% damage for 8 seconds after picking up a blood orb, which is you're going to be doing all the time. So that's basically like a flat damage bonus for this build. Then here on the left, I've branched out to 4% maximum life. That's again going to enhance your overpower damage and your survivability, well, because it's life. Then there's like 2% maximum life, these little guys here, and 2.5 blood orb healing. You don't really need these, but well, that's the way to get to those guys, so I had to take them. And then on the right, I've branched out some more into this node here, 20% damage for 8 seconds after picking up a blood orb, and also 12.5 damage while healthy. And we are going to remain healthy for most of the time because of our barrier. So that's again like a 32.5% flat damage boost to the build, which is very good. There's some more damage while healthy here, and some more damage 5 seconds after picking up a blood orb here, which is always nice. Here, this one is basically obligatory. This is overpower damage, so 60% overpower damage here, massive. More overpower damage in these little guys here all over the place, so you definitely want to take this. And then the third tile that I've included is Bloodbath, and here you want to take the legendary mode because this is 50% more overpower damage to the attacks that are guaranteed to overpower. So basically every 6 attack that you're going to be doing with Bloodlands. For the glyph, I've chosen Blood Drinker here, just because, mainly because of the additional bonus that it grants, which is Blood Orbs fortify you for 7% of your maximum life. So this is going to be my second source of fortify, aside from the skill. What was it called again? Drain Vitality, aside from Drain Vitality. So yeah, this is going to be my second source of fortify, and it will allow me to fortify faster, much faster actually, because we're going to be spawning and consuming a lot of blood orbs with our modified Bloodlands. So it also grants 150% to all magic nodes within range. So here I've taken the one that enhances my damage to fortified. So these 3 guys are going to be doing, allowing me to do more damage while fortified. And this one is 20% damage while fortified, so that's always nice. Then you also want this, 25% damage while healthy and 30% overpower damage. So this one is basically an auto include also for a overpower build. More damage while healthy here and more overpower damage here. Next, I've chosen to attach this tile here, which is Flesh Eater, and again I've not gone for the legendary node here. Why? Because yeah, it sounds good, 40% damage for 6 seconds after consuming 5 corpses, so we're gonna be consuming a lot of corpses, right? So the 40% damage bonus is going to be always there. Well, yeah, but then again it's also kind of unreliable, especially when you're fighting a boss. So when you're fighting a boss, corpses are not as easy to come by with this build. So I'd rather spend all these nodes that I would need here, 11 nodes I think, for the additional damage to elites thing and some other stuff. So because this one, well, yeah, it's gonna be allowing me to do more damage to regular enemies, but not to bosses. And this one is particularly going to make me do more damage against bosses, which is, in my opinion, better. Other than that, for the glyph, I've chosen Undaunted here. That's going to give me 53% damage while fortified. I decided to not go for this node, so that would be another 7.9% while fortified, because instead I've used the 2 points to get this legendary node, because here you would get a 7.5% damage while fortified, but here with the same 2 nodes you get a either 50% increased damage or 15% damage reduction. So for the cost of 2 nodes, that's kind of better, 8% versus 15%. And then also you want these because willpower. That's the only point of willpower that I've not taken in this part, in the range of this glyph. And you also want this because this build is going to be doing a lot of damage to regular enemies, but it's not going to be super effective against single targets. So if you have one very powerful enemy like a boss or maybe an animus carrier that's like all by himself, so you really want to amp up your damage to elites just to be able to take down bosses and particularly strong elites like animus carriers faster. And the last tile that I've attached is Scent of Death. And here I've took the legendary node, but only because it was kind of on the way to this node here, which is 4% maximum life and an additional 4% maximum life in these little guys. So basically auto include. So for 50% damage or damage reduction for the 2 points, that's kind of a good deal. And the node that I wanted to attach, the glyph I wanted to attach here is Imbiber. So this is going to give me, with every point of willpower again taken in the range of this glyph, that's going to give me 100% damage while healthy. So that's always good because of the large amount of barrier that we're going to have. We're going to stay healthy most of the time. So that's again like a flat damage bonus to the build. And also while on the way, you can also take this. 25% damage to injured enemies, and then some little guys with more damage to injured enemies here. I don't have the additional bonus here just because I don't have enough willpower. Maybe I will find a piece of gear in the future that will allow me to have this, but it's not the end of the world. Doing damage to injured enemies isn't really that important. What's more important by a lot is actually having more maximum life, just because then you do more overpower damage. So as you can see, I've basically taken, as you can see, this build, this board is very heavily built around the overpower mechanic. I've actually taken every single piece of maximum life that is available in all of the Paragon boards, and also every single piece of overpower damage bonus that is available in every single tile on the Paragon board. So that's it for the Paragon board. So now let's go over to the stats really quickly. First of all, you can see the three main stats: attack power, armor, and life. First of all, first thing you're going to notice is because of the overpower build, I have an absolutely insane health pool of 23,432 points of life. And this helps a lot for your survivability. This is an extremely tanky build. And it allows you to do 100 level nightmare dungeons without any issues once you get the setup that I have here or similar. 5,402 armor, that's kind of okay, and then it's going to be enhanced further by the aspect that I have in my trousers. So that's going to be enhanced further by 30%, and then 13,000 attack power. That's also kind of okay, but the overpower damage bonus does not count to this value. So keep in mind that you're going to be doing a lot more damage once you're fortified, once you're healthy, and once you get the overpower damage bonus, just because overpower damage is based on your life, and you have a lot of life with this build. Going over the other stats: 500 intelligence, 500 something willpower, just because I need it for all of the different nodes on the Paragon board. Weapon damage 2007, attack speed bonus 28%, and overpower damage. Because I built so much around overpowered, I get a massive 680.3% bonus to my overpowered attacks. And you will really feel this while playing with this build. You are going to be basically crushing everything on the screen with every 6th attack that you do. So you need the attack speed bonus to make sure that that 6th attack comes as soon as possible. Then critical strike chance 22%, with Bone Storm that's going to be 40%, so basically almost every second attack is going to be a critical strike. Then 70% critical strike damage, that always helps. Then damage from blood orbs, so after picking up a blood orb, so basically always, my damage is further enhanced by a 125% because of all of the affixes that I have on the Paragon board and in my gear. Damage while fortified, almost 150, damage while healthy, almost 200, so that's also nice. Maximum life 23,000, potion capacity 9, 64% more healing from blood orbs, that always helps. Also, what else? Fortify bonus 30%, so that's gonna be 30%, whatever base percent of life that you have as fortify plus the 30% bonus. Damage reduction while fortified 7.3, damage reduction from close 17.4, maximum essence 130, and this is particularly important also, essence regeneration 4.52, because that's going to round up to 5, which in turn is going to allow me to break even with the Wrathful Heart of the Great Feast and do double damage at just the cost of not passively regenerating essence. What else? Yeah, movement speed 150% more, and yeah, that's basically it for the stats. And then the last thing I want to talk about is maybe some possible modifications you can make to this build. So mainly the thing that you may want to modify is the aspect that I have in this ring. Here I have, whenever your blood skills overpower, you gain 50% attack speed for 4 seconds. So that allows me to just constantly have plus 50% additional attack speed, because since every 6 of my attacks overpowers, then, and I have a lot of attack speed bonus already, then once I get the 50% attack bonus, then these next 6 attacks are going to come in so fast that this bonus will not end. It's going to be less than 4 seconds. So that means I'm just going to have this bonus over and over as long as I keep attacking enemies. But actually this is only one of the options that you can put in this ring. This one allows me to do more damage, so that's why I'm currently using it. But the other things that you can put here is maybe offensive aspect of Untimely Death. So this one is going to allow you to do more overpower damage as you heal over 100%. So if you take this one, then you're going to do a little bit more damage, but you're going to have less attack speed. It plays kind of nice. When you have it, you really want to get the Blood Orb healing up to a significant amount, because then all of these blood orbs that you're going to be consuming are going to heal you above 100%, so that's going to be increasing the damage of your next overpowering attack by more and more, up to the maximum bonus of 60 most of the time actually. So that's one of the aspects that you can put in this ring instead of Ratma's Chosen. The other aspects that you can put is Bloodseeker. This one does 23% more damage to your primary target, and this works really well for elites, because when elites have a lot of enemies around them, then you're going to be doing a lot more damage. That's almost 25% damage per lanced enemy, and you're going to be lancing a lot of enemies because of all of the blood lances that you spawn. So but it won't be as effective against bosses, just because bosses usually don't have any additional enemies around them. So just keep that in mind. So for elites, great. For bosses, not that great. Next one you can do here to run faster is Ultimate Shadow. So you can put Ultimate Shadow here, and then in the skill tree you can put 3 points in Reaper's Pursuit. And what that's going to do is your Bone Storm is going to be doing shadow damage, and shadow damage is going to be increasing your movement speed because of the way Reaper's Pursuit works. So this will make you run 50% faster still, so that's going to make you run like really fast. So maybe this is a good setup for when you're doing lower level Nightmare dungeons, where you don't really care to do as much damage as possible, but you just care to run through the dungeon as fast as possible and kill all the elites and get all of the loot and all of the money. Then the next thing you can put here is Fast Blood resource aspect. This one actually helps your resource management a lot, cooldown management a lot, because each blood orb that you consume with the modified Bloodlands is going to reduce your ultimate cooldown, so your cooldown with Bone Storm. So if you have problems with this build, that you constantly run out of Bone Storm and the next Bone Storm is not ready yet, you can just take this, and then that's going to basically end those troubles. You're going to have Bone Storm active all of the time with this aspect in the ring instead of Ratma's Chosen. Next one, Blood Orbs grant 18 additional essence. This one will make you just not have any problems with essence management. Also, aspect of the Umbral, restore 2 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy, so you're going to be crowd controlling a lot with the Grapify, and the Shared Misery aspect, so that's going to help you regenerate your essence as well. And the last one that you can consider is Starlight. So the Starlight aspect is going to gain you 40 of your primary resource for every 25% of your life that you heal. And because you're consuming blood orbs a lot, then you're going to be healing a lot. So every 25% you heal, that's going to grant you 1/3 of your additional essence. So yeah, so that's it, I suppose. I have to tell you that I'm really going to miss this build. It's amazing. It plays really well. It's extremely fun to play. And once Season 1 is over, I am really going to miss not having Heart of the Picana, because then it's not going to be that much like a Lightning Fury Amazon anymore. And this build really plays a lot like Lightning Amazon. It has the same strength as Lightning Amazon, and it also even has the same kind of weaknesses and issues as the Lightning Amazon used to have. So I really recommend this build. Try it out by yourself. It's amazing, it's extremely fun, and it's also pretty non-standard. What I see is people don't tend to play like this with Necro in Diablo 4. So if you want to do something different, I really recommend going for something like the Blood Amazon in Diablo 4. That's it. Thanks, and bye bye.